Okay, in this video I'm going to be talking more about machetes. There's very good grade machetes you could get out there. I mean, very expensive ones. This is a very cheap, I think I paid $5 for this machete. You find them at like your Army, Navy surplus stores and stuff like that. This one wasn't too fancy at all, but I've actually got a lot of use out of it and turned it into much more than just a $5 machete. Now, what I was able to do with this machete here was put 4 different edges on this machete, and they all hold a different purpose. So this machete is very versatile, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. The price point is low because it needs a lot of work. I mean, the handle is pretty rough. You get hot spots over time. It's not made out of great material. The steel is fine. It's actually very good steel considering the use. For a machete, you want your steel to have a little bit of flex in it. So this steel is perfect for a machete. On other type of knives, it may not work as well, but for this price point, this steel is actually very good. So the only issue with it was the edge. I mean, it came very dull, so it needed a lot of work. But if you understand how to use sharpening stones and files and things like that, you could reprofile the edges on this and make it a lot more of a functional tool. And that's exactly what I did. But instead of reprofiling it all to have the same edge across the entire length of the blade, I've kind of segmented the different blades for different jobs on this machete. So it's actually a very versatile tool because this is equivalent to bringing almost 4 blades out with me, but I would only be bringing the one. But with this one, I will be able to do many different jobs. So I'm going to go into detail a little bit more about that. Now, it's hard to pick up on video, but from this portion to this portion of the blade, so everything right here is a very steep Scandinavian style grind. So very sharp, very steep angle. This is going to be great for carving work and a lot of fine work, and that's why I put it on this section of the blade. So if I was doing very fine task and using this edge to create small curls or carving, things of that nature, as you could see, you could get some pretty fine shavings there, and I could use those to build bird nests and things of that nature. So for a lot of the carving task, I'm going to be using this portion of the blade. A lot of times with carving, you'll be using your knife as a draw knife, which means you'll be moving it towards you like so. So this is, you know, if you're making bows and things like that, this carving method is actually very, very useful. But in order to do that, you see I grip the back of the blade here. So I actually rounded off this portion so I can use it as a draw knife. So this part is round, this part is Scandinavian with a very steep grind. Having that there, I've really been able to do a lot of tasks that you would normally have a very difficult time doing with a machete because it's so big. But now I could do very fine tasks with my machete. You know, sometimes I'll pin it into a log and actually move the wood around the blade rather than the blade around the wood. This gives me a lot of options for utilizing this machete. As we move up here to the part that I'm going to be using for chopping, this is where machetes really made a name for themselves, not for carving. Normally they say carry a machete and then bring a small carving knife so you could do the 2 different jobs with the 2 different blades, because using the large knife for carving can be cumbersome. But by creating the lower portion of this machete to have a carving edge and rounding the top spine, I don't have to carry the 2 knives now because I have the 2 separate knives in the same edge. So I've been able to, you know, really cut down extra weight, extra gear, things like this. Would I still probably pair this up with another tool? Yes. But if it was a one tool option, it just became a more versatile one tool option. So with this being chopping edge, this edge is more of a convex edge, meaning it's more round. Instead of going straight down to a point, it's going to round. And that convex edge is going to be able to deal with a lot more impact, right? So if I'm going to be swinging and hacking and chopping with this portion of the blade, it has to have the strength to be able to do that. So from this portion to this portion is a chopping edge, and it's convexed. From this portion to this portion, Scandinavian for my fine carving work. Round, so I could use as a drawing knife. And then this part of the blade I actually squared off, so it has a 90-degree spine. That comes in handy for many different things. You could get very fine scrapings by working with the spine of the knife in that way, to clean off brush and different things like that. The spine has many uses. Once you're out there, you'll see that there's tons of uses. Also, ferro rods. People strike ferro rods all the time. You don't really want to strike the ferro rod on your edges because it will roll your edge. In a pinch, in a survival situation, if you needed to, it's perfectly fine. It will get the job done. The fire is more important than rolling out your edge. Plus, there's ways of making strops and ways of sharpening your knives out there to take out those imperfections in the blade that you're going to create. So it's not a big deal. A lot of guys make it a big deal. I've seen a lot of videos where if the guy does it on his blade, people freak out. If you know how to put an edge on your blade, you know how to repair an edge, and if you're good at that, you realize you could do it with many different items that you could just find out in the wilderness. So it's not like I have to bring a series of stones in order to take that curve out of my blade. Not if you know what you're doing. So with that being said, if you had to in a pinch, yeah, just use the blade. It's going to work just fine, and you'll still be able to utilize the knife. Plus, if I curve and create an imperfection in just this portion of my blade, and I dedicate this portion to my blade for using for ferro rods, I still have all this other blade for every other task. So that little imperfection in my blade right here is not going to be a deal breaker for me, because I have other pieces of edge to use as my knife. So it's not a problem. So if I was using a ferro rod and I wanted to preserve my edge, because I use my 90-degree spine not just for ferro rods, mainly for many other reasons, such as scraping and scoring bone and things like that. That's what I tend to use it for. But it serves as a function to be able to use for a ferro rod as well. So you could get good sparks off that. You just have to kind of hold it a little bit at an angle, and you'll use that 90-degree spine to create sparks and preserve your blade edge if that's what you have to do. But again, you don't have to do it. I've seen that become a much bigger issue than it needs to become. So for a $5 machete, just by understanding how to work and reprofile edges and how each edge should be used, I've now made a machete into more of a one tool option. Not that you're going to go out there with one tool anyway, because if you're prepared, you're normally going to bring a series of tools because you understand their importance and value. But you should be able to do it off just one tool. So if I'm going to carry a machete, even if I'm pairing it up with other knives, I want to make the most out of my machete. You don't need a convex cutting edge from here to here. Most of the time when you're using a machete, you're just chopping and you're using just this portion alone. So this portion kind of gets neglected anyway. You see a lot of people won't even use this portion when it comes to chopping. So to make the most out of this portion, you could turn it into a Scandinavian grind and get some really good carving work, because you're not going to use it anyway. Same with the spine. You know, this edge normally gets overlooked and people don't tend to use it, but it's there. You may as well make the most out of it. That 90-degree spine would bite into my fingers when using it as a draw knife, so that's why at about this point here I started to round that edge so it's very comfortable in my hand and doesn't create any kind of hot spots when I'm doing extended carving. So this is just a way to take a $5 machete and with a little bit of knowledge turn it into much more of a versatile tool. Okay, so thanks for watching. Take care, guys.